Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Living in the West, a series of episodes where we look into the lives of the Muslim minorities living in the West. Previously, we spoke about the Muslim minorities, the importance for us to look at them and study their lives in the West. We have with us today Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad from the Muslim Research and Development Foundation, an organization and think tank from the United Kingdom who look into providing solutions for those Muslims living in the West. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Haytham, previously we discussed some of the spheres or dimensions that the Muslim lives in the West. We spoke about a social context. Can we move on speedily to look at the economical context? As we know, the world is changing economically. Many things have happened recently in the world, which has made people look into their lives economically. The Muslim, when he lives in the West, how should you look at this economical dimension?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. The economical life or the economical dimension is a very, very important dimension in people's life in general. You know, if any country is weak from an economical point of view, then the country will be weak. And the first aim for people to look for is to better their economical situation. Individuals as well as communities. And we all know that now we are moving from the military power to the economical power. And many countries have invaded the whole world because of their economical strength. And you know, now they said that the real lords of the world are not the warlords, but are the lords of economics. And they said now that the big companies are the real rulers of the whole world. Now, this dimension is a very central dimension in the life of Muslim minorities. That's why the Muslim communities in different non-Muslim countries, they have to put attention to this dimension, and they have to strengthen themselves from an economical point of view, and they have to build and establish institutions, economical institutions, financial institutions that are able to finance different Islamic projects, and they have to have those institutions in order to take care of the social dimension in the life of Muslims in any country.
These institutions, you're saying, again, it's a community-based obligation, yes?
Yes, it is a community-based obligation, and those institutions should be as independent as possible. They should not be linked to the governments, or they should not be linked to big companies. Why? Because of different number of reasons. First of all, those institutions, Islamic institutions, the Islamic economical system is totally different from the Western economical system. The ethos of that system is totally different from the ethos of the Western-based system. This is one thing. So it's difficult to link them strongly together. This is one thing. The other thing is, because the fact that most of the Western institutions are riba-based institutions, then they are subject to falling down and subject to recession and at any point of time. And you know, from a historical point of view, we have seen so many recessions. The Black Monday in 1929 and all the recessions that followed that and the recent recession that took place globally, these recessions, the main reason behind these recessions is the riba-based system. So if those Islamic institutions would like to stand and continue providing help for the Muslim communities, they should be away from this riba-based system. And by them being independent, they can provide an example, a role model for the Western people, and they can follow that model.
Some say, Sheikh Haytham, though, that this model that you're putting forward, or this keeping away from, how should we say, normal financial institutions, governments and regulatory bodies like this, the problem may be that in a bubble...
Not regulatory
Okay, not regulatory bodies, but shall we say, bodies set up with banks and so forth. They will say, well, how can a financial product survive in the riba bubble? Because basically everything is run by riba, and you want a purely utopian Islamic financial model.
Exactly. That is a big question. And by the way, in the West, we have a big debate about this issue. Can we have an independent institutions, or we have to work within the institutions that are using the riba-based system or using the capital-based system? And of course, from a theoretical point of view, we have to try to have independent institutions. However, we might not be able to have them as independent as we want, but how far can we go? Of course, we cannot discuss this issue, and we need experts to discuss this issue. Experts in Sharia, experts in finance, experts in law, to discuss how can we build those institutions. That's why we are calling upon the communities in different non-Muslim countries to come together to discuss this issue. And really, I would like to see some forms of organizations that are established in order to discuss issues related to financial problems for Muslims in the West, only financial problems.
Okay, there's 2 points here that I want to say, but one of them maybe we'll discuss later on. But the first would be, is it about starting this project? Because maybe the financial product we're looking for, the products, may not be available for 100 years. But the fact is that we need to start somewhere and maybe work towards something.
Exactly. And see, there are many avenues that we can use in order to start. And let me refer here to a very brilliant example of an institution established in Canada a few years ago. And that institution started as a community project where every single one is contributing an amount, a monthly amount of money towards a pool. And then that money is used to help those in need, either by giving them sadaqah or they are borrowing it, provided that they give what they give the same amount without interest. Then after some time, that institution became bigger and more people were interested in participating in this poll. Then what happened is that this institution became like a bank, and it started to finance some properties. And now, alhamdulillah, they finance hundreds of properties in Canada, and the capital of that institution is over $100 million. That model has been copied to some countries. In Britain, for example, we have Al-Ansar Finance. They copied the same model. And the Ansar Finance started again purely based on a community level. And it is totally dependent from the banking system. And it is doing well. But we need more people to be convinced that Muslims have to have independent institutions, financial institutions. Once we have big number of people convinced that we have to have such institutions, then inshallah we will be successful. And by the way, many non-Muslims, they would like to contribute towards such institutions because they are fed up with the riba-based system. And there is a bank in Switzerland, in the Switzerland, and that bank does not use any riba.
That was going to be my second question, was that, do you think it's attractive for non-Muslims who see this model? Isn't this one of the aims, that they'll see the beauty of Islam?
Exactly. It is a very attractive model. But we have to explain it well to the people, and we have to show people the benefits. And you know, this recession that took place, or the financial crisis that took place recently, it was many Western thinkers. They said that the main reason behind it is this riba, or exaggeration in lending. Now, many Muslim thinkers and economists recommended that the West should start to adopt Islamic finance. And they said that to look at the Islamic institutions in the West, and of course in the East, and they are the less to be affected by this financial crisis, which means that if you don't have this riba and riba-based system, and all the derivatives that have been invented recently, and the speculation process that those banking systems are going through, then we won't have such crisis.
Okay, well, this is a good point to stop, and we're going to take a short break and return in a couple of minutes. Please stay with us in Living in the West.
Back to the Prophet. Join Sheikh Ammar in the program Back to the Prophet, wherein he teaches us practical lessons from the Prophet's life and how this can help us to overcome our challenges in the present.
We talk about the life example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, seeking guidance for ourselves. In the early days after the revelation of the Holy Quran, the Muslims were greatly persecuted, so much so that quite a few Muslims had to leave Arabia and migrate to Africa to live among Ahl Kitab, Christian people who followed the gospel of Christ.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Living in the West. Just before the break, Sheikh, we discussed a bit about Islamic economics, about the need for us to start as a community-based project, a community, to develop these Islamic institutions. How far down the line, do we need to start looking for solutions, and how important is it for us on a community level not to negate this and stick to what we have, which is the non-Islamic alternative?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. See, from an Islamic perspective, we have many mechanisms to strengthen our economical position. And we have some tools. We have the zakah and we have the sadaqah. Okay? But we have different forms of sadaqah. Awqaf, for example, trusts or endowments, are very important economical tools that have been neglected by so many Muslims, in particular Muslims in the West. If you look at our Islamic history, you will find it rich in mentioning some of those examples of awqaf that have been established for different reasons. Do you imagine that some historians mentioned that during the Abbasi time, there were in some Muslim cities awqaf or trusts to finance, what do you think? To find solutions for lost dogs or for street dogs. Imagine. Why? Because, alhamdulillah, they have established themselves, but this issue has been neglected. There are dogs in the streets. How can they deal with this problem? They have to find a solution for it. Who is going to finance that? one of the Muslims established a waqf for this, means that they have established awqaf for many other reasons.
Could you explain this? Sorry, I mean, you're going into awqaf and endowment, but what do you mean for the lay person? What do you mean by this trust and endowment? Collective?
A trust is a person is putting a certain amount of money or is buying a certain property and he is making it as a trust where he doesn't have access to it once it is in this position of waqf, and no others have access to it, and the outcome of that waqf,
the output of that waqf,
the output of that waqf, and the income that this waqf is generating is going to go to either poor people or going to go to schools or other projects. And as I said, in our Islamic history is very rich with so many examples of awqaf. You know that we used to have many universities, many schools across the Muslim world, and many of those schools have awqaf to finance them. Otherwise, they have thousands of students, and how can those thousands of students survive? Now, if you look, for example, to some Western countries, Britain, for example, they have so many awqaf. The people there, the non-Muslims, I'm talking about the non-Muslims, they have awqaf. And do you imagine that there is a waqf or a trust to finance one of the bridges over the Thames River in order to maintain that bridge? Who is maintaining it? The income for that trust. Now, we need to copy that. Of course, in Britain, for example, they say that have the British legal system taken this principle of awqaf from Muslims or not? This is an issue to be discussed. But the point here is we need that the Muslim communities to have enough awqaf to finance their projects, and the awqaf, the trust, should not be limited to spend on the poor people. No, they awqaf should spend and finance other projects. Let me give you an example. In the West, in every single Western country, there is a problem with regards to divorcees, women who are divorced and they don't find any shelter. What do? They go to the government, to the social services to help them. And sometimes the social services, they send them to a very far place, a place there are no Muslims, there are no services for Muslims, etc. So the Muslim woman with her children will be subject to harassment, will be subject to discrimination, etc. If we as Muslim communities have awqaf to finance such projects, then we will not put our Muslim mothers and our children into that situation. Take, for example, the issue of financing students and students' loans. Student loans may involve a level of riba, but many students are forced to use these student loans because there are no Islamic institutions to finance them. Now see, if we look at the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter and the first long chapter, and as some scholars said that most of the ahkam refer to Surah Al-Baqarah. That's why Ibn Umar spent either 10 or 12 years in memorizing or studying Surah Al-Baqarah. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Jalla wa Ala, after the ayah of Al-Kursi started, and the story of Ibrahim started to speak about the economical system. Now many people, when they speak about the Islamic system, they started to speak about the prohibition of riba, and they neglect to speak about the role of sadaqah, the role of charity, whether as awqaf or trust, endowments, or whether any other form of sadaqah. If you see those ayat, starting ayah 263, and I would urge all the brothers and sisters watching this program to go and study the ayat, these ayat, amazing verses, and it reflects the miracles of the Quran, and it reflects the miracle of the Islamic system. Allah Jalla wa Ala started to encourage people to spend money. Allah Jalla wa Ala wanted to treat them not to be so greedy. Allah Jalla wa Ala tried from all different angles to treat this problem of greediness. And Allah Jalla wa Ala tried from Allah Jalla wa Ala from different angles encouraged Muslims to spend. مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء. Then Allah Jalla wa Ala, Allah Jalla wa Ala in this ayah is giving the example of the one who is spent. Allah Jalla wa Ala will expand that, and Allah Jalla wa Ala will give in return 700 times of what he spent. Then in one of the ayat, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا. Look, Allah Jalla wa Ala left nothing for any single person to be so greedy. Allah Jalla wa Ala left nothing for the Muslim community not to spend for the sake of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Allah Jalla wa Ala is telling them that yes, I know that the shaitan is promising you poverty, and the shaitan is encouraging you to do fahsha, to do sin. But remember, Allah is promising you maghfirah, forgiveness, and fadla, access in wealth and sustenance. After all these ayat, almost 13 ayah, we're talking about spending. Allah Jalla wa Ala never spoke in those ayat about the prohibition of riba. And the prohibition of riba has not been mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, which is, as I said, is the first chapter after Surah Al-Fatiha, the longest chapter in the Quran. After that, after establishing the principle of spending, being proactive, building the institutions, then Allah Jalla wa Ala started to speak about what? The prohibition of riba. So we have to reflect on this once we want to build our economical system, because so many people, when we talk about Islamic finance, they think immediately about what? The prohibition of riba, and they neglect the role of zakah, they neglect the role of charity, and this is not true.
So the people in the West, one of the problems, like you said, is that they don't come forward and put money in trusts and awqaf and so forth. And this is one of the reasons, maybe because they don't really understand the Islamic value, because these ayats have never been explained to them and pushed forward. So as a community now, we have to also educate the individual to the importance of this.
Exactly.
And this is incumbent on the community, yes?
Exactly. See, in many non-Muslim countries, by law, the inheritance law, the person will lose 40% of his income, of his assets.
That's if it's intestate?
After death, will lose 40%. Means the inheritance or the heirs will lose 40% of the assets of their father or the one who died. Now, how are we going to deal with this problem? Some organizations in some European countries, such as Britain, they came up with with a tax, some tax regulations in order to avoid this big amount. And one of their recommendations is to recommend the families to have awqaf for the family, because the awqaf will not be included in the assets. Therefore, the amount of taxes will be deducted from the assets will be minimum. Now, many Muslims are unaware of this, and they are unaware of possible solutions. And that's why we say we need education to educate people. Imagine that many Muslim couples, old couples, they die and they have a property. They lose the property because they haven't put it as a wasiyyah or as a waqf, and they don't have any legal heirs. And because of this, it goes to the government directly, and it is not lost, and neither they are benefiting it after death. And you know the hadith that the actions of the son of Adam comes to an end except for three things. And what? Sadaqatun jariyah.
So this waqf is a sadaqah jariyah.
Is considered to be a sadaqah jariyah. That's why we need to educate Muslims about the importance of this. It is true that we need to educate them about the prohibition of riba, but before talking about the prohibition of riba, we need to talk about the importance of this sadaqah in its wider form.
So again, this goes back to what we spoke about previously, having a clear vision for the community. If the community understands the vision, or the aims of the community are, they will look forward to providing this.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And that's why we said in the beginning, and that's why even in these episodes, we started to speak from top to down. Okay, we use this scheme in order to explain to people that you have to, first of all, to be united. You have to have a unified visions, because then you can improve. There are certain things that you cannot establish as individuals, but as communities. But if the community is disunited,
scattered,
the community does not have a unified vision, then they cannot build such institutions.
Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, Jazakallah khair for being with us on Living in the West. That's all the time we have for you today on this episode of Living in the West. Please join me next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
La